Pete Hegseth had his confirmation hearing today in the Senate. This is supposed to be Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense. Now, and of course, the Republicans gave him sugar-coated questions and he provided some fluff answers. But the Democrats, of course, you know, being that it's politics, the Democrats really got in him. Let's go over Tammy Duckworth confirmation questions. Anybody with a brain would know when someone starts their questions off like this, it's going to be a problem.
Mr. Hegseth, this hearing is about whether you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense, and one of the qualifications to answer my colleague's question is to actually win the votes of every member of this committee and to be confirmed by the United States Senate. And you need to convince us that you're worthy of that vote, because the people of the state of Illinois voted for me to be their senator so that I could cast that vote when it comes to picking who is going to be the next Secretary of Defense.
Whenever someone emphasizes the words like, you need to do something because I'm supposed to do something, you know it's going to be pretty bad. And I think I know one reason why she was upset.
This hearing now seems to be a hearing about whether or not women are qualified to serve in combat, and not about whether or not you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense.
Well, first of all, let me go to that knife hand. If you don't know what a knife hand is, she gave it.
And not about whether or not you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense.
But secondly, it's because she served in combat as a combat pilot and she lost both legs in combat. And Pete had the audacity to say that women don't belong in combat. And before she got to her questions, she had to slap him one more time.
The American people need a SecDef who's ready to lead on day one. You are not that person.
Now that was her thesis. Let's see her try to prove it.
With that in mind, Mr. Hegseth, I want you to try to explain to the American people, this committee, who have to vote for you, and to our troops who are deployed around the world, why you are qualified to lead the Department of Defense. We already know that you so badly mangled a budget that after you left, they had to bring in a forensic accountant to figure out what went wrong.
So now I want you guys, I'm going to let this play through, but I want you guys to hear her question, and I want you to hear their back and forth, so I'm not going to cut through that.
Have you led an audit of any organization? Yes or no? I don't want a long answer. Yes or no? Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
And the way my leadership has been stated,
did you lead an audit? Yes or no?
What are you afraid of?
You can't answer this question. Yes or no, did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every part of my leadership of these organizations has been misrepresented.
I will take that as a no. What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit. What guidance did you give the auditors? None, because you've never led an audit. Nobody expects you to be an accountant, Mr. Hegseth. What we expect is for you to understand the complexity of this Pentagon budget process that is absolutely necessary to outfit our warfighters.
He was trying to give the political answer to say something like to the effect of, well, you know, we were always in compliance. We never had any kind of issues when it came to fiduciary matters. But that wasn't the question. The question was, have you ever participated, led, or contributed in any fashion to any audit in a company in which you've led? He has not. So she moved on to some other matters.
The Secretary of Defense is required to make quick decisions every single day with high-level information that's being provided for them. A Secretary of Defense has to have breadth and depth of knowledge. Right now, I am concerned that you have neither.
That was a transition and a jab before her punch. I love this stuff.
What is the highest level of international negotiations that you have engaged in, that you have led in? Because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads and signs. Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to
no. The answer is no. Can you name one of the three main ones that the Secretary of Defense signs?
You're talking about defense arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't remember to mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified.
So, okay, when you're doing confirmation hearings like this, they're going to throw curveball questions at you. So I get that. But at a minimum, bro, you should understand what kind of agreements that For the most part, you should understand what the job of Secretary of Defense is. Go and read the job description. That's simple as that. And also, for you to say that you've taught on the SOFA agreement, the Status of Forces agreement, that will be a part of the job of the Secretary of Defense. So you will be teaching that part, right? Okay.
You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, and trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr.
and data
Hegseth,
transfers
none
with
of those
them.
countries are in
allies
ASEAN.
Across.
None of those 3 countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations.
So unlike Pete Hegseth, I went and did some research on my own. And ASEAN is what she was saying. It's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And there are about 10 of them or so in that collective. And here's a map of what they look like. If he had done any research, he would probably understand that. She went on and proceeded to light his ass up with the officer creed because I think she was a colonel and he was a major. So after she lit his ass up with that, she ended her segment like this.
And they pack their rucksacks and they go to war. And they deserve a leader who can lead them, not a leader who wants to lower the standards for himself or raising the standards for other people. And by the way, our troops already meet the standards. We ask troops to man that ship, fight that fire, fly that helicopter until their very last breath. And they do that every single day. They cannot be led by someone who's not competent to do the job. How can we ask these warriors to train and perform the absolute highest standards when you are asking us to lower the standards to make you the Secretary of Defense simply because you are buddies with our president-elect? And by the way, he has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. I'm not quite sure he's the kind of CEO you want to refer to as a successful businessman. Let me make it clear. You can't seem to grasp that there is no U.S. military as we know it without the incredible women that we serve. Women who've earned their place in their units. You have not earned your place as Secretary of Defense. You say you care about keeping our armed forces strong and that you like that our armed forces are meritocracy, then let's not lower the standards for you. You, sir, are a no-go at this station.
I don't need to add to that. But after her statement, this is how he looked.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. I would like to submit for the record a letter submitted by Mr. Brian.
What do you think?